Hello and good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This is Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. I'm Ryan, so that must mean by process of elimination that you're Joe.
I am Joe.
Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. But Ryan, how are you doing? I heard you went to Talladega.
I did. I went to Talladega. My driver, Kyle Busch, did his typical not finish in relevance. Mm-hmm. Now the two guys that I went with, both Chase Elliott fans, so they levitated the entire way home. But it was great. I found fans that not so much like Kyle Busch, and I took pictures with them.
I saw one of your pictures on Facebook. I thought it was great. He was wearing a shirt that we can't talk about on the radio.
Yeah, it was vulgar enough that you literally can't even spell it out on radio.
Right. But I'm glad you got to go to that. That's been a long-time dream of mine to get down to Talladega. I haven't been yet, but I think at some point I'm going to have to get down there. I'm glad you got to make it this week. I didn't know if old Hurricane Ian was going to take the place out. But
it was something to watch for at one point, yes.
Good deal.
But let's jump in. We're going to talk a little bit of baseball to start off this week's episode. So I'm not sure if you've been paying attention. Some of you have been tuning out the Reds as they get at 100 losses, losing on their final game by double digits. Take that, Phil. But
hey, where are you going to go? I mean, where are you going to go?
I know where they're going home.
Where are you going to go?
They're not going to the playoffs.
You ought to just stop complaining. I mean, where are you going to go?
Yeah, well, not the playoffs. So Aaron Judge just hit his 62nd home run Tuesday night. And, Joe, I was sitting there thinking, and I had a question for you, because this is the first time, at least in recent memory, that a player has done something so historic from a batting perspective that it really gives second thought. The last time we had a home run total of this magnitude was with Barry Bonds when he hit 73 home runs. Now, Aaron Judge has 20 more hits than him. He has a .311 batting average and over 130 RBIs, and he pretty much compares to him and when the home run record was broken by Mark McGwire, whenever he broke Roger Maris's home run. Barry Bonds had a better average. Mark McGwire had more RBIs. But right now, Aaron Judge, at least against McGwire, has more home runs. But I ask you this. Number one, do you care? And then number two, is this record being broken by Aaron Judge, who most people, at least as of right now, with the knowledge that we know in 2022, is a clean player? Is this more impactful and more impressive to you, what Aaron Judge has done this year compared to Barry Bonds' 73 home runs?
This is going to get some people riled up. And it may even get you riled up, my thoughts on this. So, I'm not going to sit here and say that I was the athlete that my father was by any means, but my dad played several years of professional baseball in the late 60s and early 70s. And through conversations we've had during his life, there's no doubt in my mind that even as far back as that, players were using performance-enhancing substances to help them out, whether it would be to recover or just other things that they thought helped them.
Right.
And if you want to give credence to that, there's a book out there called Ball 4. It's by an old knuckleball pitcher and talks about what pitchers were doing back in that era and substances that they were taking to help them perform, or they thought were helping them perform. Now, having said that, the home run record in Major League Baseball is 73 home runs. And whether you agree, disagree, whether Barry Bonds should be given the credit for that, he hit 73 home runs. And one thing that I was told a long time ago was steroids don't help you hit a 98 miles an hour fastball, and they don't help you hit an 89 mile an hour curveball. All steroids do is turn a 450-foot home run into a 525-foot home run, which fans love. So I don't want to downplay what Aaron Judge has done. He's hit 62 home runs. But if you go back to 1961 when Roger Maris hit 61,
right,
what was the argument then? Well, he hit 61, but he played 8 more games because Babe Ruth hit 60 in 154 games. So this same conversation was given back then. So right now we're talking, does Aaron Judge, does he deserve the home run title because Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds are rumored to be performance-enhancing drug users? which they all deny, I think, still to this point. But
Barry Bonds admitted he did, but it was by accident.
right. Okay. Yeah, you're absolutely right on that. So, do you? This is not really the same argument as, okay, they played 8 more games than Babe Ruth did, or they played 8 more games than Roger Maris did, which they didn't because it's still a 162 game schedule. But we're still comparing two different things, right? So did they use performance enhancing drugs? I think this is a O.J. Simpson, the glove doesn't fit argument. I think we know that they were using them, or at least we could go on our speculation.
MLB knew they were using them.
Right. So, and MLB didn't care at the time.
Exactly right.
MLB didn't care until Jose Canseco decided to write a book and rat everybody out for using them. Because the one thing steroids did, and 525-foot home runs do, is they put butts in seats and they sell tickets. And
That's
people go to the ballpark. But all that aside, I don't want to put down what Aaron Judge has done. He's hit 62 home runs in a single major league season, which is an incredible accomplishment. I mean, if you can get a guy that hits on average in the 30, if you can get 4 or 5 years out of a guy to hit 30 home runs a season for 4 or 5 years, they're considered an incredible baseball player.
Right.
Aaron Judge hit 62, which is now the American League record, by the way.
Correct.
Previously held by Roger Maris, but Aaron Judge holds it now. And I think it's an accomplishment. I think, though, that the vast majority of fans, like me and you and everybody else, they still see that mark of 73 as the mark to beat. And I think Aaron Judge probably sees it that way.
I would argue a little bit towards the end of that. I'm not sure everybody does. I think it's a generational thing. It depends on when you watched baseball, or more importantly, when you quit watching baseball, because baseball has alienated its fans, whether that be in 1994 or even more recently.
Right.
But I'm normally not the very politically correct guy, but I actually view them laterally as impressive. The difference being, and why I feel that way, is Barry Bonds, I feel like, faced more impressive pitchers during his time. Pitchers, not throwers. He had to face guys that actually knew how to throw on both sides of the plate, used their stuff, and pitched well into their 40s because they were excellent at their craft, whether that be Randy Johnson, Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, John Smoltz. Insert player. It was a great era of pitching.
It was. Kurt Schilling.
Yes.
I mean, the list goes on.
Right. Guys that should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, even Roger Clemens, a guy that easily, unanimously should be in the Hall of Fame. Players like that are not. They were facing guys like that every single day when Barry Bonds did it. Another thing, let's not pretend that Barry Bonds was not a good player before rumored and now alleged steroid use. Barry Bonds was an all-star player his entire career.
That is correct.
He has the most Gold Gloves of all time in the outfield, which steroids doesn't help you catch the ball. Just for people that are wondering. And it literally just went from he was a really, really, really good player to the best player, in my opinion. And, you talk about hitting a ball and the distance that it travels, that being changed by steroids. Well, to me, maybe you're talking with Barry Bonds, maybe he hit 60 home runs, but that extra 20 feet added, 10 more home runs, 13 more home runs. That stats, the analysis, we'll never know, because it's Barry Bonds. He was already a good player. Right. How many home runs were added because he already knew how to make contact with the ball? He just made contact even further, and would-be doubles at the wall now turn into home runs. That we'll never know. That being said, you're still talking 12 more home runs than the next best guy. Now, the opposite of that I'll say with Aaron Judge is the ball's never been more not in play in baseball in recent times. It's either walk, strikeout, or home run. The thing about Aaron Judge is, he hit 311. I think a lot of people need to recognize that. He's on pace to possibly compete, if not win, the Triple Crown with home runs, batting average, and RBI. And then Aaron Judge faces more 100-mile-an-hour pitchers than Barry Bonds faced in his entire career. He does that in 1 year. Because more people throw the ball harder now. More people throw over 98 mile an hour in probably the first 2 months of baseball than Barry Bonds has ever faced in his entire life. So it is a little bit different, but again, they're more throwers, not pitchers.
Right.
So I view what both have done equally as impressive, and I hold it to that. I never discredit Barry Bonds' 73 home runs. Do I think that it'll ever be broken? I don't think it will. But at the same time, you talk about the playing field, and MLB willingly let these players play knowing they were taking performance-enhancing drugs. Don't act like this was the MLB naively had no idea
100%
that this was going on. They looked at their checkbooks and go, huh? Okay.
right.
Until, like you said, it was drawn to light by Jose Canseco. Now we've seen it tilt, and we have not seen nothing this far since steroids. But at the same time, Barry Bonds' competition on the mound was just as willing and able to use steroids as he did.
And they did.
You're 100%.
Yeah.
That's not to be argued with. They did. So I view both things as equally as impressive, but outside of ESPN cutting off your football game and putting in Aaron Judge's at-bats, which I know people in the SEC are not very appealed to.
Well, at least they got to watch them this weekend.
Yeah. But I feel like this should be a bigger story than what it is, and I feel like Roger Manfred and baseball, which the conversations we've had before, are the reason why it's not. I mean, you look at two guys that have never once been associated with steroids outside of just allegations from conspiracy theorists and what they've done right before the playoffs. And Albert Pujols and now Aaron Judge. One hitting over 700 home runs and the other one breaking, the AL record for home runs. And the MLB should be able to ride this historic momentum of two great people, not just great athletes, great people in Albert Pujols and Aaron Judge. And instead, it's almost like ESPN has to force you to watch it.
Right.
And I don't know if that's more of a problem from baseball as a whole, because then today it came out that MLB had the most revenue of all time. So, and they just had their highest weekend attendance ever. It just something doesn't add up. And I think what will be lost is, I think more based on what Barry Bonds did, I think Aaron Judge is actually going to be forgettable.
Yeah, it's definitely so. I remember back to Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire's run. 98. And I was a young man at the time, and I was a fan of baseball. I love baseball. I grew up with baseball. It's almost a religion in my house. And, that is still one of the most memorable seasons to me. I remember right where I was when Mark McGwire hit a 60-second home run, that barely made it over the left field wall. I remember him, missing first base as he ran by. He went back and hugged his son. And it was an incredible experience for a kid of my age to watch that. And it really got me hooked on baseball for the rest of my life. Now, we fast forward, almost not quite 30 years later, but we fast forward till now, and I'm struggling to find games to watch on TVs, and I'm basically keeping up with Major League Baseball from my ESPN app, reading the headlines, because Cincinnati games are blocked out for me. That's my team. I can't watch them, and I think as a fan of my generation, baseball has gone downhill to me. Now, the younger generation, I think maybe it's kind of having a resurgence, but for a number of years, I think baseball has been in decline. And, we're not even having this conversation right now if the lockout didn't end when it did, and they didn't have a 162-game season this year. Yeah. So we were that close to not even seeing Aaron Judge be able to do this year, because he almost didn't play 162 games. Now, the whole conversation we're having about the home run king and what's more relevant, still to this day, Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds are the only two players that have beat Babe Ruth in the home run title in 154 games. And that argument has totally went out the window.
Right.
I mean, you have 8 more games to achieve this accomplishment than what Babe Ruth had. And I know that we're talking about 1919 to 1929 or 1930, but Babe Ruth is still one of the greatest home run hitters of all time. I mean, he had multiple years in the 50s, multiple years in the 40s, coming out of an era of previous to Babe Ruth, the highest home run total in Major League Baseball was 12 for a 154-game season. So But like we talked off air, that was the dead ball era for Major League Baseball, and I don't know what they did to the thing, but they gave it a little bit more juice, and they started flying out of the ballpark. But still, if you want to talk about the most prolific home run hitter in bunches of all time, it's still Babe Ruth, and that's why he's a legend, and he will be a legend as long as baseball exists.
Well, the thing that I think you alluded to that really just got my attention, and I guess it should lead myself to Barry Bonds, is where you were when 1998. I know where I was when 73 was about to be hit, or whenever Barry Bonds was about to break the record. I was sitting in my living room watching Sunday Night Baseball, and I remember Barry Bonds hitting the home run and raising his hand straight into the air as he hit it. And I was like, that was awesome. You know what I won't remember? Where I was when Aaron Judge hit 62.
I know where you were.
Well, right. Yeah, that's kind of creepy, actually. But I thought I had somebody watching me. But you know, but I won't view it that way. It wasn't must watch to me for what Aaron Judge did. I literally got the thing on my phone and said Aaron Judge hit 62, and I went, cool.
That's exactly what I did.
Put it down. Because it's already, it just doesn't have the same magnitude of what Barry Bonds does. And maybe that's just because everybody knew Barry Bonds was the greatest threat in baseball. Maybe that's why. I don't think everybody views Aaron Judge that way. I think we view him as a really good player who's a good outfielder. He's a nice guy, and he's a home run hitter. But I just don't think people view Barry Bonds got walked with the bases loaded one time when the other team was up 2 runs, and they end up winning the game. Nobody walked Aaron Judge. I mean, he literally was never walked toward this last part of the season. And, you know, he has 20 more hits than the other guys. You know why he has 20 more hits? Because he didn't walk them. Right. So I guess I just view it so much differently because Barry Bonds was that guy. He was that dude that you had to watch. I mean, he literally, any single at-bat, could take a yard. And I think maybe that's why my perspective has changed. But in hindsight, if I lay things out on the table, I want to view them as equally. But maybe I'm just biased because sitting here talking with you, I really don't.
Well, and you know, I'll go one step further to you. You know, when Barry Bonds' chase was on and he hit 71, that wasn't as incredible to me, if that makes sense. Because, you know, we had just seen it. We had just seen it 5 or 6 years prior. You know, and we watched the race, which started out with Griffey and Sosa and McGuire, and then it ended up being a 2-horse race. And I think, if I remember right, Sosa hit 66 or 67. Yeah. Nobody ever remembers the second place guy, obviously. And McGuire hit 70. But, you know, that race was incredible, and we hadn't seen it, or society hadn't seen it. Obviously, I didn't see it in 1961, but
right.
Baseball as a whole hadn't seen that since 1961. And what surrounded that, because if you remember, I mean, they've made a movie out of it. I think it's even called 61, where there was kind of this media kind of made up story around, you know, Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris, and you know they were actually incredible friends, but tried to act like that they were competing for this home run title, which they weren't.
Yeah.
But you know that's
you're saying the media lies sometimes.
Yeah, not us, not us, but. You know, they kind of did the same thing with Sammy Sosa and Mark McGuire, but we hadn't seen it in so long. It made it that much more incredible. Well, 6 or 7 years later, here Barry Bonds is doing it, and everybody. And to me, it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, we just watched this. So
that being said, we're almost 2 decades out since that happened, and by terms of the steroid era, we're 60 years out from Roger Maris. So shouldn't this be greater based on that argument?
I think, but steroids aside, the record is still 73. Okay. And the 154 game record right now is still 63. So, and I think that's what Barry Bonds was at 154 games, if I remember right. So, you know, I think it's an incredible achievement. I don't think you put anything. You don't put Aaron Judge down at all. I mean, there's not too many. No. There's not too many people that could hit over 55 in a season. And if you hit that 60 home run mark, whether it's 60 or 73, you are an elite company and you are a great baseball hitter, because not any person can just wake up and decide that they're going to hit 60-something home runs in a Major League Baseball season. He's an incredible hitter. You have to be. So I don't put it down. I think he's a great hitter, but records are records for a reason. You know, nobody ever talks about the guy that got 2,999 hits, you know.
Yeah, and that's what makes baseball great, Joe, because you can compare 60 years worth, and it's really not that big of a deal in the scope of baseball. You're not going to compare 1960 quarterbacks to today's quarterbacks. So, you know, let us know what you think at home. You know, what, in your mind, what do you reminisce about whenever you hear these baseball players and their accomplishments? Is it more impressive now, or was it back then, or do you not recognize any of it and you go back to Roger Maris? So we'd be interested to see what you have to say. We appreciate you tuning in. Again, it's Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. We'll be back right after.
What's up, guys? I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grilling Crew Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for listening here to Ryan and Joe on the Sports Hour. And I want to remind you, the Grilling Crew Sports Network is powered and brought to you by betting.net. Betting.net is the best bet for betting the online casino or sports book that's right for you. Make sure you check them out now, guys, at betting.net. This is a great service. If you live in Indiana or you live in Kentucky or you live in Ohio, if you go on betting.net, it will actually take you to the best sites to legally bet in the state you live in. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. And right now, we're going to go back to Ryan and Joe at the Sports Hour.
Hello and welcome back to Froggy's Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. My name is Ryan Peters. I'm joined by Joe Spillman, the greatest football coach in this room right here, right now.
In the Froggy studio.
Right here, right now.
I am the only football coach here right now.
Right here, right now. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's football games. This week 5, the last week that we will have all 16 games / all 32 teams. So, Joe, let's dive right in, as we usually do. Thursday night, 10 night, the Indianapolis Colts are on the road to take on the Denver Broncos. Most people feel like two teams that should be winning their division, favored to win their division, and both teams have looked absolutely terrible. The Indianapolis Colts are 3.5-point underdogs. I'll start this off. I think the Denver Broncos win. No Jonathan Taylor. Not that he was good last week, 20 carries for 42 yards. But I feel like Denver's Broncos defense has actually been consistent. They look good. I'm not sure anything on Indianapolis has looked good outside of one game. So I'm going to go the Broncos to cover the 3.5 points at Mile High.
I'm going to go one step further than you. I think you're absolutely right. The Broncos defense has looked, I won't say good. They have looked consistent. And I think that the Colts actually are a better team than the Broncos right now from what we've seen. So I think the Colts win the game outright.
All right. So there you have that. There you go, Colts fans. I'm the Colts hater. That's okay. The New York Giants at 3-1 take on the Green Bay Packers. New York is visiting Green Bay. Joe, you want to guess the line?
5.5.
7.5 points.
Oh, man. I'm getting bad at this.
Well, it's actually a surprising line. If I want you to guess it, normally it's not because it's an easy one to guess. So this game is across the pond, and that's all I'll say about that. The New York Giants, again, are 7.5-point dogs. Joe, how do you feel?
I think the Packers win this game, but not by 7. So I'm gonna take the Giants in the points.
I will too, because it's over across the pond. It's
Right.
not at Lambeau Field. So normally those games are not fun to watch or come down to the last second, which what we saw the Saints game.
That was a great game.
It absolutely was. I didn't get to watch it because I was in Talladega, but I did watch the highlights of it, and it looked like it was a really good game. So I'm with you. I think the Giants covered. They've been good under new head coach Brian Dable, so I will go ahead and go with the Giants. Next, the Seahawks take on the New Orleans Saints. The Seahawks are 5.5-point underdogs, despite having the most accurate quarterback in the league at 77%, Geno Smith. Joe, how do you feel?
Andy Dalton still playing this week?
Still up in the air.
Oh, man. Well, that's irrelevant. I think the Seahawks win. So what was the spread?
5.5. The Seahawks are getting 5.5.
Ooh, I don't know.
Well, if you think the Seahawks are getting 5.5, are going to win, then you got to take the 5.5 because you're getting it.
That means somebody knows something I don't, though. So, but I think I'll take them in the points then.
Yeah, I think the Seahawks have actually been impressive under Geno. I think he's got a fire lit, and he's been playing really well. Now Marcus Lattimore might have something to say about that, but I do like the Seahawks. I think the Saints offense has looked really bad without their previous head coach. So I'm going to go the Seahawks as well. Next, Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, whoever Pittsburgh's playing, I'm taking them.
Kenny Pickett will be the starter. Do you want to guess the line on this one?
Probably 10.5.
14.
Oh, man, I'm way off today. Yeah.
14, which in the NFL is huge.
Yeah, that's incredible.
The Buffalo Bills are favored at home. How do you feel?
That's a huge line. I'm going to take it, though. I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills win by 14 or more.
I am too. I've actually picked the Steelers to cover every single week, and only 1 week have they covered, and that was against us. So I, as well, will take Buffalo and the 14 points. I feel like the Steelers, they're in a really bad situation now, and they should have lost their first game.
No.
The Chicago Bears at +7 are on the road to take on the Minnesota Vikings in this NFC North matchup. How do you feel about this?
Justin Fields is really bad.
He's been awful.
He's terrible.
Man.
He's playing terrible.
They're even scared to
I think they lose by more than a touchdown.
Okay.
So
I like the Bears defense, but you're
unless
right.
it rains. If it rains, I get to take
it's
that
in a
back.
dome.
Oh, well.
If it rains, it probably will be canceled because the dome is falling apart, which we've seen in Minnesota when the Triple H Dome actually had snow completely collapse on the field. So, all right. So Joe's got -7 the Vikings unless it rains, and then he'll take the Bears. I won't take the Bears. I won't take the Bears. I won't take them to cover. +7. The Houston Texans, my favorite team to pick all season long, take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. -7 are the home favorite Jaguars. Joe, how do you feel?
I don't know. I'm going to take that's a huge spread. I'm going to take the Texans. The Texans in the points.
Now, last week we talked about no, it was last week. We've been talking twice now about the Jaguars against the Eagles and the Chargers. And you laughed at me when I picked the Jaguars to cover against the Chargers. And not only did they cover, they beat them.
Right.
Granted, there's some broken cartilage and stuff with their quarterback, but nonetheless, I feel like Jacksonville has a chance to take the division by the horns right now, literally. And I am going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars to cover.
Oh, okay.
Now, this spread, this is surprising to me, but we'll see how you feel. The Miami Dolphins are on the road to take on the New York Jets. The Dolphins, unaffiliated, quote-unquote, doctor has been fired, so I'm sure nothing related to Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins are -3 favored on the road. Teddy Two Gloves Bridgewater will be the quarterback, and second-year Zach Wilson takes over the helm for the Jets as he did last week.
Well, I will say this, that Bridgewater didn't look that bad Thursday night.
Oh, he did not look bad
He did
at
not
all.
look bad. He's still slinging the ball. I still think that he could probably be a starter in this league. So I still think the Dolphins have an incredible team with Teddy Bridgewater taking the snaps. So I'm going to go with them because the Jets are still really bad.
I agree. I take the Miami Dolphins. I completely agree. The Dolphins did a right move. They knew Tua's small. He's prone to getting injured, and you put a serviceable backup behind him, and that's what the Dolphins have. So
they brought Teddy in thinking he may be the starter. That was supposed to be competition for Tua. So
no more. No more competition needed. The Atlanta Falcons at +9 are on the road to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Joe, how do you feel on this one?
Well, I think Tom Brady and Giselle right now are having some problems, and I don't think his head's going to be in the game. So I'm going to take Desmond Ridder, the backup, and the points with the Atlanta Falcons, but I still think Tampa Bay wins this game.
Oh my goodness. I think the opposite. I think the greatest quarterback of all time will be tired of seeing his name in the spotlight, and it's not related to football. And the victims of such thrashing will be the Atlanta Falcons defense. So I think Tom Brady comes out and leads the NFL in passing yards this week.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
So this Sunday night, I saw all over social media people putting Tom Brady down. And apparently they didn't look at the stats because he still threw for like 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, the guy's incredible.
It's not his fault.
He's 45 years old. He's
Yes.
45.
Yes, and would beat every single one of you listening in an arm wrestling competition right now. The Detroit Lions at plus 3.5 on the road against the New England Patriots, where they might be using Bailey Zappi at quarterback because Mac Jones has a high ankle sprain. Brian Hoyer got hurt.
Turf toe.
So then Bailey Zappi made his appearance. And of all the college quarterbacks you've ever heard in your entire life that never made it to the NFL, a guy like Bailey Zappi made it, which is impressive. And not only impressive, he might be a 3.5-point favorite against the Detroit Lions, the number 1 offense in the NFL, and the number 32 defense.
Yeah, they're terrible. What are they averaging? They're averaging like 35 points a game, and they still can't win.
And they had nobody at wide receiver last year.
Man. I know a lot of people were talking about Jared Goff being a top 10 quarterback. I still don't believe that. I think he's had a good start to the season, but the Lions are still really bad. But the Patriots are not good this year either. And you said they're 3.5-point favorites?
Yeah.
Whew. I guess I'm going to have to take them because I think it'll be a touchdown or less.
I'm going to say it's a shootout, and I think Detroit wins a shootout. So I'm going to take the Detroit Lions.
You know they can't stop the run or the pass, right?
Bailey Zappi may stop the pass.
I think if Detroit decides to put 11 traffic cones
I'm
out,
not putting my money on Bailey Zappi.
I think if they put 11 traffic cones on defense, they might cover the spread.
Well, at least 11 traffic cones won't move out of the way. We'll just put it that way.
It might trip somebody.
The Tennessee Titans go on the road to take on the Washington Potatoes. The Titans are 2.5-point favorites. They've looked to turn their season around after the debacle against the Buffalo Bills. I think the Titans run away literally with Derrick Henry in this one, and they cover the 2.5 points. I think this actually could be a 10-point game.
No, I agree with that. I can't add anything to that.
The LA Chargers take on the Cleveland Browns. I think this is actually an interesting game. Cleveland's coming off a really tough loss. They've beaten some decent teams. They've also given up 14-point leads in the fourth quarter against the Jets. I don't know who the Cleveland Browns are. And the Chargers have looked terrible themselves at times as well. Joe, who do you have in this one with the Chargers being 2.5-point road favorites?
I think the Chargers probably win by 3 or more. Is Herbert still?
Yeah, he's there.
He's still hurt though.
Yeah.
So I think a hurt Herbert still beats the Cleveland Browns.
Herbert.
Herbert. Yeah.
Herbert. I agree. I think that there's a possibility that Nick Chubb runs for like 130 yards in this game because the Chargers stop nobody. They literally play matador defense, as in ole, whenever a running back comes through. But that being said, the Cleveland Browns defense has been really bad as well. They're missing Clowney. They're missing Garrett, who was in a car wreck. So I agree. I think the Chargers cover. The 49ers, 6.5-point favorites against the Carolina Panthers. Man, I hate taking road favorites all the time. I feel like every single week we're always taking road favorites.
Jimmy G, baby.
Yeah, Jimmy Handsome. I'm going to go with him.
I would go with them too.
Jimmy GQ, give me the 6.5 points. I'm calling on the 49ers. Matt Rule is going to be the first coach fired in the NFL.
You think so?
Mark it here first.
I believe you. Jimmy G played really well last week. So.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson played well. Deebo Samuel's a man.
Oh,
he
man.
played well.
He's like a man amongst boys.
He really is.
They're like, hey, we're just going to throw a screen pass to him, and he's going to take it 80 yards on you for a touchdown because you can't tackle him.
No, you can't. He's the strongest running wide receiver I can remember.
And Jimmy G didn't step out of the back of the end zone this week, so that's a plus.
Yeah, progress already. The Battle of the Birds, the Philadelphia Eagles, the only NFL's undefeated team, take on the Arizona Cardinals. The Eagles are 5.5-point favorites. I don't like the Cardinals' defense. And again, I'll take a road favorite. I think the Eagles cover.
I think so, too. And this may actually be the toughest game remaining on the Eagles' schedule. If you look at their schedule, if they were in college football, they wouldn't make the playoffs because their wins wouldn't be weighted enough. Their schedule, they have the weakest schedule in the NFL. We're possibly looking at a 15-win season out of them if they don't fall apart. And I think Arizona pays their quarterback way too much, and I think their defense is horrible. I think Philadelphia wins this game handily.
One guy on this radio show said that I am tired of buying into the Eagles' hype, and all they've done is become the last undefeated team.
Yeah.
So Pat's on back to me. The Dallas Cowboys take on the LA Rams. The Dallas Cowboys now using their number one quarterback.
Mistake.
Cooper Rush. It's Cooper Rush. Dak ain't back.
Dak said he wants to play this
I don't
week.
care.
Yeah.
He may want to play, but the sheriff's in town, and his
Yeah.
name's Cooper Rush.
Yeah.
And it took me a minute to get you to buy in.
No, I bought
To-
it. He's second coming.
He's
to Kurt
dollar
Warner.
store Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
So the Cowboys are 5.5 points underdogs. Give me the Cowboys. I think they win the game.
I'll take the Cowboys in the points. I'm not going to say they win the game, but I'll be rooting for them. I'm a Cooper Rush fan.
Well, that's going to wrap it up with our picks. You're going to say, well, I thought there was one more game. You're exactly right. We're going to talk about it here in just a second. Sunday Night Football is between your Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens. Actually, I want to get one more, Joe, real quick. I got a little ahead of myself. Monday night, the Raiders take on the Chiefs. The Raiders 7.5-point favorites. How do you feel?
Oh, man. I'm going to take the Chiefs. They look pretty good against Tampa.
I think the Raiders actually have something figured out with Patrick Mahomes.
You
They've
think
always
they
played
get-
them well.
They can get within 7.5?
I do.
Hey, before we close this out, though, I want to get your thoughts on the Tua injury Thursday night real quick. And the reason why I want to do that is I kind of feel when the news broke that the unaffiliated physician or the unaffiliated doctor,
Air quotes.
was fired. I actually posted, and probably nobody knew what I was talking about, but I actually posted on hashtag Fall Guy. You know, I haven't heard a name of who this doctor is. I just heard unaffiliated doctor.
Yeah, neurologist.
So, do you think most people read right through that as a ploy to say, "Hey, we're fixing the problem"?
This is a publicity stunt to fire a guy that probably has never worked as a neurologist. He could have been the janitor that they changed the title of him to the neurologist. No.
Like, hey, you're a doctor now.
Yeah.
And you're
Congratulations.
fired.
Yeah. On your new promotion. You're not allowed to work here anymore. No, joking aside, I actually believe that. I actually believe that this is a complete publicity stunt. They may have never, ever worked with this guy, or he may have gave like a third opinion, and he just said, I don't really care.
Right.
Because you're right. You don't have any idea what he is by name. All we know, his name could be Dr. Seuss.
Well, here's and I'm going to give my short opinion on this. I think somebody, whether it be the coaching staff, the general management, somebody at the Dolphins needs to be held accountable for this. And I understand that Tua is a football player, and he probably wants to play worse than anybody. But there's a reason why, with all the head trauma that the NFL's had, that they have these procedures in place. When you see a guy that has taken what looked like a head and neck impact and gets up and falls down because he loses the ability for his motor skills to work. His brain is not communicating with his legs, and he does it twice, and you rush him back to the locker room and come back out and say, well, it was back problems. I never saw anything in 2 games after that to tell me his back was hurting him at all. And the hit that he took when he hit the turf Thursday night in Cincinnati, Tua is lucky that there's potential for him to even come back and play in the NFL, because 2 concussions of that magnitude, that close together, could have everlasting effects for the rest of your life. And
Don't
wanna
understate it, Joe. It could have killed him.
Yeah, I mean, that guy was in serious. I can't even get through it, because I think it is just a failure by the entire Miami Dolphins organization. They could have killed a player in the NFL because they want to win football games, and that's uncalled for. I mean, at the end of the day, this is entertainment. This is games. I mean, these players know what they're getting into when they're playing football. I get that, and they make millions of dollars. But the game of football is not worth any player's life. I don't care how much they love the game.
Let me tell you this, Joe. The unaffiliated neurologist is not the same person that brought him back into the game against the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
He went back with the team doctor and the training staff, and they let him come back against the Buffalo Bills. Now, the team doctor or whoever the heck the guy's name was might have let him play against the Bengals, but that guy wasn't there whenever they, like you said, Tua had I refer to it as a newborn baby cow legs, and completely folded onto the ground. So you're right. This should be one of the biggest fines and one of the biggest hammer drops that we've seen. Oh, and by the way, you can't suspend the owner of the Dolphins because he's already suspended for trying to get Tom Brady illegally.
But you know what you could do? You could suspend coaching staff. Sean Payton was suspended for an entire season, and I think that this at least warrants that.
I agree, and it definitely should lose draft picks because when you pretend to care about player safety, you show that you care about player safety right here, right now. So that's going to wrap it up for our picks and a little sidebar there for Tua Tagovailoa. Stay tuned. We're getting ready to talk about the Sunday night primetime game between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. Next on Froggy's Talking Sports with Ryan.
What's up, guys? I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I want to thank you guys for listening here to Ryan and Joe on the Sports Hour. And I want to remind you, the Grueling Truth Sports Network is powered and brought to you by betting.net. Betting.net is the best bet for betting the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Make sure you check them out now, guys, at betting.net. This is a great service. If you live in Indiana or you live in Kentucky or you live in Ohio, if you go on betting.net, it will actually take you to the best sites to legally bet in the state you live in. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. And right now, we're going to go back to Ryan and Joe at the Sports Hour.
Welcome back. It's the last segment that we have here, and we typically save that for the Cincinnati Bengals. And, well, we're going to do exactly that. Your Cincinnati Bengals take on the AFC North rival, the Baltimore Ravens. Cincinnati 2-2. Baltimore coming off two very tough losses. One against the Buffalo Bills, where they scored 0 points in the second half. And then against the Miami Dolphins, where they allowed Miami to score 21 unanswered points in the fourth quarter alone. So this game being at Baltimore, the Ravens have a lot to prove, but your Bengals played well on Thursday night. You know, it's definitely something good to see for everybody not named Joe Mixon. That being said, Joe, what can we expect in this AFC North rivalry game where Cincinnati handedly took care of the Ravens last year?
In both games, they handily took care of them. So I think that the offense needs to improve. I think we've seen a lot more play action, which has led to great success for the Bengals offense. I actually think that the strongest point on this Bengals team this year was their defense. But, you know, I think they played well on Thursday, but I also think at times they played a little soft. You know,
they did.
They played with a lot of cushion there in the secondary that just gets me irate and screaming at my TV.
It was very bend but don't breaky.
I know my wife always, she dislikes the games that I think that the Bengals are playing poor defense. For whatever reason, I look up and most of the time she's gone from the house. I think she's tired of hearing me yell. But I think that the Bengals secondary, I think they play well. I think they do big things. But I also think that I would like them to stop playing with so much cushion. I mean, those 3 to 5 to 7 yard passes that you're just leaving wide open are killing you. And it's demoralizing as a defensive whole to have a team just drive down the field on you little by little in small chunks. I mean, at every level, that's demoralizing. So I would like their secondary to stop playing with so much cushion. But, you're talking about NFL defensive backs and NFL wide receivers, and I can only say so much about what I would like to see. I'm not the one out there playing, or getting burnt. But I also think that I think in the absence of DJ Reader, I think the line played really well. The defensive line. I think, in my opinion, Joe Mixon has something wrong with him. I would like
mentally, physically.
I think it's mentally, because we talked last week about the holes that Joe Mixon was just ignoring.
Yeah.
Well, he ran through those holes this week, but he's not running like he used to. He's not running hard. He's not hitting it. It looks like he's so apprehensive after he gets the ball. It's causing the defense to catch up with him, and that's not the Joe Mixon that we've seen in recent years.
Even in space, Joe, he has not looked good. I remember a play, they ran a stretch play over to the left side. He had one 3-finger tackle attempt to break, and he couldn't do it. I mean, it's been that type of year for Joe, and he also is the worst NFL runner in terms of yards after contact, which goes right in hand with what you're saying. On top of that, Zach Taylor has gone out of his way to try to instill confidence with him at the goal line. I mean, literally has done everything but go out there and give him a hug and say, we're going to do this together. And I think it's hurting the Bengals offense. As you know, it took a Hayden Hurst touchdown. The only pass that I can remember in the red zone on the 1-yard line, we had 6 different plays on the 1-yard line. We ran it 5 times. Mm-hmm. That being said, I thought the Bengals offense looked better. I also want to say this. I think Joe Burrow has some growth to do, what I've seen so far this year. Getting technically into it, they played a cover 1 defense the entire night, and the bracket coverage was on Jamar Chase. And if you're wondering what's wrong with Jamar Chase, he's getting treated like an NFL superstar now. Mm-hmm. Welcome to the league.
Right.
You're not surprising anybody now, Jamar. You get double coverage. How are you going to respond? Well, it's typically not how is he going to respond. It's, hey, T. Higgins, what are you going to do against single?
Right.
I think T. Higgins could have had 250 yards in that game if Joe would have threw the ball more, because T. Higgins literally beat his man like a drum the same way he did against the touchdown. Xavier Howard was not a match for T. Higgins. That's what they tried to do. They tried to put the worst cornerback with the safety on Jamar and then put Xavier Howard on T. Higgins. That being said, the Baltimore Ravens secondary is absolutely terrible. I think the Miami Dolphins defense is solid. The Ravens secondary is awful. You saw it last week. Marcus Peters is yelling at John Harbaugh because they literally can't stop anyone right now with their secondary. And that's the same thing that happened last year. I think that Joe Burrow should have a coming out party this week. If he is anything like we saw last year, this secondary would be one to tee off on. They are the 29th best, which means the 3rd worst, team against the passing the entire year. So this should be a huge game. On the other side, I think Lou Anarumo has figured out how to play against Lamar Jackson. The Bengals don't really rush their defensive line against Lamar Jackson. And the way that I put that is it's almost like if you beat him initially, good. If not, spy.
Right. You almost have to play him like you're playing against a college option team. You really got to set the edge and make sure nobody gets wide.
Exactly right.
And that one guy's him.
Discipline is greater than getting sacks and then forcing Lamar to throw against you. Well, what the Bengals did last year is they played cover 4 palms, which you would know what that looks like. And essentially we're putting everybody on the sidelines. The only thing you can do is try to beat our guys over the top, and Marquise Hollywood Brown's not here anymore. Rashad Bateman's quick, but he's hurt. So you then have to throw quick routes. You have to throw very accurate windows, and that's not Lamar's strength. And I think the Bengals have figured out how to play against the Baltimore Ravens, and I think we see a lot of success regardless of what the spread says with the Bengals being 3-point dogs.
No, I agree with that. I will say that, this may be the week where your defensive line has to play a little bit more disciplined football and not run themselves out of the play or run themselves past Lamar Jackson, because, once you run that and you don't have the angle on Lamar Jackson, you're not going to tackle him. And that, to me, tells me that the pass rush is going to have to come from the interior of the defensive line, and this is going to be the week where you really see the absence of DJ Reader at the defensive tackle position. So I think that I think you're absolutely right, though. I think the Bengals could throw up a lot of points on the Ravens secondary. However, they have to keep doing what they're doing. They have to run that play action. But in order for the play action to work, you have to have a running back there that's going to gain a substantial amount of yards when you actually do run the ball. I mean, if they know that it's just going to be a naked play action play every play and there's no chance to run the ball, it's going to stop working eventually. And right now you have been able to do that on the back of P. Ryan and Mixon. with the potential for them to run the ball. But right now, like we talked about with Mixon, I think Pirine might be a better option right now. I think there's something mentally going on. I know Mixon met with the entire offensive line this past week, so I don't know what they're trying to figure out because the line has played in the last 2 games. They played really well.
Yeah, and we expected them to play well against the Jets. Let's not hide that. But Miami's defense came in playing really, really well, and Joe got sacked 1 time. And outside of that, you didn't see a lot of pressure.
Right.
I mean, it looked like the O-line. And as bad as we dogged them, and so did everybody else, it's good to give credit to where credit's due. We came on this show and said, the offensive line's fixable. It's there. Their techniques aren't very good because it looks like a team that never played together.
Right, because they hadn't.
Because they had. Exactly right. And that's what happens when you don't play preseason. You essentially gave 1 game away. If we played the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, I have very strong intuition that we probably win and don't throw 4 interceptions and fumble at 1 time. But that's for a different day. That being said, I think the onus on this game is tackling. I think you have to have a good tackling game against the Ravens. They do have some speed. They do have good players. But, Joe, if you let this team turn 5 yards into 12, a first down to a point to where it's a 40-yard gain, that's how you lose. And the reason why that is because it takes the other team off the field, the Cincinnati Bengals offense. So you're right. We've been playing very cushion coverage. And if you're going to do that, you need to tackle really, really, really well. And I think this week will be the hardest opponent that they have in terms of tackling because a guy named Lamar Jackson's not very easy to take down.
No, he's not. He's essentially in everything put aside that everybody always makes fun of Lamar Jackson for really being a running back, but essentially he is a running back that throws the ball okay and he sees the field really well. So that's what you're contending with, and running quarterbacks are always dangerous. They're always dangerous because they're always able to, and we see this out of Josh Allen a lot, pick up that 3rd and 4 when the coverage is great downfield. Because when you're playing cover 3, when you're playing cover 4, the only people that you have on the interior to stop a Lamar Jackson are your 4-down linemen. So, or your 3-down linemen, depending on what defensive scheme you're in. So those 3 or 4-down linemen aren't catching Lamar Jackson. It's just not going to happen. And they're able to make up that ground he's able to make up that ground with his feet. So I think a huge thing for the Bengals this week is they have to come out and they got to set the tempo of the game. We saw that on Sunday night with Kansas City and Tampa Bay, or was that Monday? I may be getting my days.
No, it was Sunday night.
Yeah, Sunday night. We saw, essentially Tampa Bay gave out and they gave a free 7 points to Kansas City. So, the tempo of the game was set right there, and there was really, they were playing in a hole the entire game. The Bengals, to me, even though they have historically the last couple of years been a second-half team, I think that they need to start setting the tempo of the game early like they did and scoring first or making that big, stop on the first offensive series of the opposing team. So I really think tempo is key in this game as well.
Well, I actually applaud Zach Taylor putting his money where his mouth is and actually doing something to show his confidence. And he said, if we win the coin toss, we're playing offense. I think they need to continue that.
Right.
I think that's what this team needs until it's no longer, quote unquote, an issue or a problem or, the monkey on your back or whatever you want to call it, and say, hey, the offense is the offense. We knew what the offense was going to be. But you put the team on their heels by going out there and going down the floor or going down the field on your opponent's own stadium and score 7 points. Right. Say it's going to be like this all night long. You do that, you instill confidence in the entire team because now the defense, the best group of players that we've seen has been the defensive side go, we don't have to play perfect. It felt like the defense had to play perfect the first 2 games because things just weren't clicking.
Right.
Now you do that, and even if they don't feel like they have to play perfect, that doesn't mean they're going to rest on their heels. That's not the way this defense plays. But all that being said, Joe, it's 3-point underdogs are the Cincinnati Bengals. Do you take the Bengals and the 3 points, and do you feel like they win, or do you think this is a Ravens game to win and cover?
The Bengals have gotten better every week, and I think that they are a better team than the Ravens. I think the Bengals win by more than 3.5 points all day long. So I'm going to take the Bengals. I mean, they're going to blow the spread out of the water, I think. I really think that, like you brought up earlier, the Baltimore Ravens secondary is not good. And with the offense that the Bengals play, especially with their play action and throwing the ball downfield, having a weak secondary is not conducive to stopping Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Tyler Boyd, and Hayden Hurst.
Yeah.
So, Hayden Hurst has turned out to be, I mean, that dude is open every time he runs a route. He's not fat. He's a big guy. He actually reminds me a lot, of Rob Gronkowski. I hate to say that, but he's a big guy. He's not real fast, but he's got what appears to me credible hands, and he runs great routes. So, he's one of those giants that can catch the ball for you. And I think he is even though I was a fan of the previous tight end, I'm not going to speak his name now. I have his jersey. I think he may be a huge improvement.
No, I think absolutely. At least draft capital, everybody else in the league thought so as well. I agree. And the reason why I was more hesitant with the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though from a top down they have a worse roster, I just feel like the Pittsburgh Steelers is always matched up better against Cincinnati Bengals than any other team in the AFC North. I feel the same way. Well, it's at the Browns because Baker Mayfield always found a way. But I just feel like the Bengals have the Ravens' number. And that was never more evident than last year when they put up over 40 points both times.
41.
And I feel like the same is happening. I feel like Lou Anarumo has an answer for Lamar Jackson that most of the NFL doesn't. And the Bengals offense has an answer for the Baltimore Ravens defense. And I think it just, put it together, and it's a great recipe for winning a football game against AFC North rival. So I think the Bengals do win. I think they cover the 3 points. I think it may hang around and be a little bit closer than we expect, but then if you put the bonus on Lamar Jackson to beat you with crisp, accurate passes, I think that's where he struggles the most, and that's why I think Cincinnati wins. That's going to wrap it up here. We want to wish best of luck to our soccer teams. They are both undefeated right now. They are both in the sectionals. I about said the Cincinnati boys. The Switzerland County boys look to be playing on Saturday night, as of what we've seen right now. And the Switzerland County girls will be playing here soon as well. So want to wish them both of luck, and also to the football team on Friday, as the basketball team will have a cookout before that one starts. So get there early and get ready to have a great time as Switzerland County takes on North Decatur. Appreciate everybody tuning in. This is Froggy Talking Sports with Ryan and Joe. We'll be back next week. Have a good night. Stay safe, and God bless.